Joel went here with number 2 of introductory commentary on the Songs of a True White Brother. The last time I spoke in some very general, vague terms. I was also somewhat purposely boring. I don't mean these videos to be entertaining, and in fact, the subject matter is quite serious in a certain kind of way. It's serious in the sense of any kind of work that wants to genuinely work with the sacred. If we're going to deal with the Hopi prophecy, we have to, among other things, honor the way that they've lived their lives and the seriousness with which they take certain aspects of their teachings. Now, it is a fact that if you visit the Hopi mesas, you'll find quite a disparity among what they think and what they believe and their relationship to their traditions and such. I'm not going to go into that today, but in fact, their prophecy recognizes that when the time of the crisis comes and when the true white brother appears, it's very likely that only one or two people will still believe strongly enough in the Hopi tradition to really follow it. Today I just want to go a little more deeply into a certain aspect of the situation having to do with modern day natural science. As most everybody knows who's paying a little bit of attention to modern cultural issues, there's a kind of argument going on between the theorists in natural science of Darwinian evolution and various Christian groups over what they call intelligent design or creationism. Most of those arguments, to anyone who's somewhat skillful, as I mentioned last time in these issues, are kind of superficial. They're talking about anything but the real basic underlying questions. In any event, I mentioned last time that what I do and what others do that are connected to the more skillful aspects of the work of the True Right Brother is quite scientific. Now, in science, there are sort of certain underlying principles, and I don't mean rules in the sense of you write down a law and you're supposed to follow this law. I mean in the sense of principled activity, moral activity. The approach that one makes to natural science, in the higher sense of what the spirit of science implies, has certain principled activities, one of which is that when you put something forward, you do it in such a way not only that it can be understood, but that someone following along can replicate the work, they can reproduce the work. And so in the sense that the skillfulness that stands behind the work that I do as a scientist of the spirit has to have that quality. People have to be able to replicate the work. That's not easy, by the way. And I think people should realize from the very get-go that this is not going to be an easy thing. Let me just give you a couple of ideas about that. In natural science, we understand, for example, that the queen of the sciences is mathematics, and everybody that practices natural science knows the relationship between mathematics and a lot of what is thought. Now, I'm not saying that everything that's thought today by natural science, given that it arises at a world conception in which there's only matter and no spirit, is true. I'm just simply suggesting that for those of us who might want to assert that spirit and matter are both real, it is incumbent upon us to develop certain things in the right way. And that means in part being able to deal with that aspect of natural science which we call the queen of natural science, mathematics. Now, if there's a queen, there's a king. And this is not well understood by a lot of scientists because of their training is not very sufficient in this element of the work. But the king of natural science is the science of philosophy. Now, a lot of people tend to think of philosophy, or one's philosophy, as a system of belief. Here we're mostly concerned with the question in that part of philosophical tradition which is called epistemology, or the science of knowing, or the science of knowledge. There is a science in the background to what we can know, what are its limits, what are its potentials, and when we come to the problem of spirit and matter, we have to be able to follow a disciplined approach. And I'm just going today to show some books. This is a book by Rudolf Steiner called A Theory of Knowledge Implicit in Goethe's World Conception. It was written by him in 1886, and it's a remarkable book. It's an instruction manual, or a map, we might say, to the nature of mind when it's engaged in working out the problem of knowledge, because that's where you work out the problem of knowledge. It's not a theory you work out on paper. It's a theory about what's the nature of your experience and what's the relationship between your experience as a thinker and the real world. And that's a book that gets into that subject in a manner in which one approaches a new development in thinking, which could be called organic thinking. Now, in 1894, Steiner produced another book called The Philosophy of Freedom, although in English he recommended the title be The Philosophy of Spiritual Activity. Now, again, it's not a system of beliefs. It's a map, as it were, to the mind in which one travels on a certain journey and develops faculties of mind which are related not this time to just organic thinking, but to a kind of thinking that can be called pure thinking. And why this leads to knowledge and what its relationship is to other scientific questions, particularly the philosophical questions of the 19th century, all of that's worked out in these books and a few other books of Rudolf Steiner, because this was where he began his life's work. Now, during his life's work, he referred to a new kind of mathematics. And so we not only have the king of the sciences, the science of philosophy, as represented in those two books, we have the queen of the sciences, which has given advancement in what's called projective geometry. And people working out of Steiner's inspiration on this level developed a new approach to projective geometry, which enabled ordinary people to come closer to it, because they did it not just through sort of algebraic formulations, but through drawings. And this we'll come to later in these dialogues and commentaries. And again, there's work involved in that. If you want to replicate the work that a scientist of the spirit does, you better be ready to tackle Steiner's books on philosophy, and you also better be ready to tackle the work that students of Steiner have produced. This is one such work. I point it out because it's the easiest one to get your hands on. It's most likely to be available on the internet and be reprinted. It's called Physical and Ethereal Spaces by George Adams, and it's about the new way of approaching the queen of the sciences, which has to do with understanding projective geometry. Now, if you want to understand the history of all of that in relationship to natural science, it's a very difficult problem. It's not simple. There's this book, Man or Matter by Ernst Lehrs, which goes into the history of natural science in relationship to these philosophical sciences and the mathematical sciences that have developed, that come out of the skillfulness of the true white brother. So there you are. One of the things that's going to happen when we work with this problem is we're going to talk about science and being scientific and all the implications that go with that. I hope you're ready for it.